I traveled all over the north and center of Saudi Arabia, came to Riyadh, and then afterwards again to the south and right and left, and spent the 6 years actually in almost all parts of the kingdom. Lived with Bedouins and slept in tents and in the open air in the desert. And it was a wonderful experience and wonderful time.
What about your experience with the Bedouins?
Bedouins, you see, are very often misunderstood in Europe. Many Westerners regard them as uncultured barbarians, which is not at all true. The Bedouins had, until very recently, a very clear-cut culture of their own. There was such a thing as Bedouin culture, which they carried with them since centuries. For instance, poetry was a thing living in the Bedouins. They not only knew and recited poetry, they could compose poetry. Once I happened to be guest of the governor of northern Saudi Arabia. He was, by the way, the brother-in-law of the king. And we were sitting outside his palace and surrounded by many people. Some of them brought judicial cases before the Amir, the governor, to decide. And he gave his judgment in this case, in that case, to the satisfaction of all parties. And one Bedouin was sitting next to me, and he turned to me and said, "Did you see that? Did you hear it?" And he recited a poem in the praise, which I later learned was by Mutanabbi, a great Arab poet, in praise of Saif-ud-Dawla, a Muslim ruler. And in that poet he spoke of the greatness of this man who was able to judge between people and so. And it occurred to me, where in the West could you find a company of unlettered people who would quote, let us say, Shakespeare to you, or Goethe, or so? Impossible. In Europe, in America, culture is reserved to a particular class of educated people, while in Arabia, among the Bedouins, it was spread throughout the whole nation. The Bedouins were as much connected with pre-Islamic poetry as any professor in a university might be. So this was an extraordinary experience, showing that these people are not barbarians, but they are inheritors of a very ancient civilization. And I began to understand why Islam had to grow up among Arabs in Arabia. This was the proper fertile ground for the spread of a religion like Islam.